it was refreshing. And then everybody started talking about it, and we went back and looked at a couple more films, and then...
You thought Clint Eastwood was the picture of calm, wisdom, and control, untouchable even. But at 95, the Hollywood legend finally let his guard down, showing a side no one ever expected. Behind that steel stare hides years of anger, betrayal, and names he's kept buried, until now. He's calling out 6 big stars who turned their backs on him when he needed loyalty the most. These weren't just co-workers. They were allies in fame, success, and glory. Yet when it mattered, they left him hanging, and Clint Eastwood never forgave or forgot. Number 1. Leonardo DiCaprio, the golden boy who crossed him. Who would have guessed that Leonardo DiCaprio, one of Hollywood's most praised actors, would be the one to make Clint walk off his own set? It happened during the 2010 filming of J. Edgar. On paper, it looked perfect. The calm, no-nonsense Eastwood teaming up with the passionate, detail-obsessed DiCaprio. But insiders say the set became a quiet battlefield from the first day. Leo showed up armed with folders of notes, stacks of historical research, even marked up FBI memos. Crew members whispered that Clint's patience ran out fast. Clint once joked, "He came in like a detective trying to solve me, but I wasn't the case." Beneath that dry humor was a real irritation. And it kept growing. The tension finally snapped during a key breakdown scene. Leo gave an incredible performance. One take, raw, emotional, absolutely flawless. The crew held their breath. Clint nodded once and said softly, "Perfect. Cut." But Leo didn't stop. He wanted another take, then another. By the 6th, Clint wasn't even behind the camera anymore. He was leaning against the craft table, coffee in hand, stone-faced. Someone asked if he was okay, and he muttered, "He's still searching for something I already found." The air turned cold. When filming ended, so did any connection between them. In later casting meetings, the moment DiCaprio's name came up, Clint would shake his head and say, "Great actor, but not my kind." They've never reunited, never shared a stage, never exchanged a single word since. Sure, Leo got his Oscar years later, but the phone never rang again from Eastwood, because to Clint, perfection means doing it once, not 6 times, and knowing when to walk away. Number 2. Michael Moore, the one who pushed Clint too far. The day Michael Moore compared American Sniper to Nazi propaganda, he didn't just spark a feud, he lit a fire that burned every bridge possible. Clint didn't shout back, didn't make a scene. He just cut Moore out of his world completely. But their tension didn't start there. It had been brewing since 2005, when Clint stood on stage at the National Board of Review Awards and said with that famous growl, "If Michael Moore ever shows up at my door with a camera, I'll kill him." The crowd laughed nervously. Clint didn't. He just stared straight ahead and walked off stage. That wasn't a joke. It was a warning. To get why Clint still holds that grudge, you have to understand what he stands for: discipline, quiet service, and old-school honor. Moore's documentaries, especially Fahrenheit 9/11, struck Clint as flashy, political stunts pretending to be truth. Moore saw soldiers as symbols in his message, but Clint saw them as heroes, men and women who deserved respect, not debate. That clash of beliefs turned their names into a Hollywood Cold War, and Clint, he's never looked back. Clint Eastwood once told a close friend, in a rare burst of emotion, it was about respect. That single word says it all. Years later, Michael Moore crossed that line again, and this time, Clint erased him completely. Nearly a decade after their first clash, Moore went online mocking American Sniper, saying it reminded him of the Nazi sniper in Inglourious Basterds. He brushed it off as a joke, but Clint's camp said he was furious. He doesn't forget insults, one longtime collaborator revealed. He deletes them. And that's exactly what Clint did. Wiped Moore out of his world like he never existed. Since that tweet, Moore's name hasn't come close to Clint's projects. Eastwood's worked with all kinds of people, liberals, conservatives, you name it. But when it comes to mocking soldiers, that's where he draws the line. In Clint's eyes, Michael Moore didn't just cross that line, he spit on it. Even today, if someone brings up Moore's name in Clint's presence, the conversation shuts down instantly. One glance from Clint, and that's the end of it. Number 3, Barbra Streisand, the perfectionist who pushed the cowboy too far. If there's one name that still makes Clint Eastwood's jaw tighten, Even after more than 9 decades in Hollywood, it's Barbra Streisand. She's the one who got under his skin so deeply that he still refuses to say her name in interviews. Their feud became one of the coldest rivalries in Hollywood history. No yelling, no scenes, just decades of pure frost. It all started back in the early 1980s, when both were transitioning from acting to directing. Streisand was famous for her obsession with control. 40, 50, sometimes 60 takes just to catch the perfect look. Clint, total opposite. 2 takes max and move on. He'd often say, if it's not real the first time, it's not worth filming. To him, Barbra represented everything wrong with the new Hollywood. Too much control, too much vanity, and way too much overthinking. By the early 90s, that creative clash had turned into open contempt. When The Prince of Tides failed to land Streisand a Best Director nomination in 1992, Clint was overheard telling a friend, maybe if she made decisions faster, she'd finish more than 3 movies in 15 years. That little jab spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Then came The Bridges of Madison County, the project that broke whatever fragile peace they had left. Streisand had been attached to direct it for years, but kept hesitating. Clint swooped in, rewrote the script, and delivered a quiet, emotional masterpiece. It earned Meryl Streep an Oscar nomination and gave Clint the sweetest revenge of all, without him saying a single word. Since that moment, they've kept their distance. Not a single collaboration, not a single handshake. To Clint, Barbra became a symbol of everything he hated in filmmaking: hesitation, control, and the death of instinct. In his world, you pull the trigger once, not 50 times. Number 4. Tommy Lee Jones, the alpha Clint couldn't tame. The very first day Tommy Lee Jones walked onto the In the Line of Fire set in 1993, Clint leaned toward a crew member and muttered, "2 bulls in 1 pen, this won't last." And he was right. At first, everyone thought they'd make a dream team, 2 tough, no-nonsense actors who respected the craft. But behind the camera, it turned into a power struggle. Jones wasn't the type to take quiet direction. He barked out suggestions, argued over scenes, rewrote his own lines, and kept performing long after Clint had yelled, "Cut!" Clint, who ran his sets like a calm, silent machine, just stood there in disbelief. One technician remembered, he'd stay in character between takes, and Clint would just stare like, "What are you doing?" The tension between Clint Eastwood and Tommy Lee Jones exploded during one unforgettable confrontation scene. Jones towered over Clint, eyes blazing, spitting out every line with raw fury. Clint finally yelled, "Cut!" But Tommy didn't stop. He kept going, glaring straight into Eastwood's eyes like it was real life, not a movie. The whole crew froze in stunned silence. After a long, heavy pause, Clint leaned toward his assistant and whispered, "Life's too short for that kind of theater." Then, without another word, he walked off, set. That quiet exit said everything. From that moment, Clint's mind was made up. Later, when casting directors suggested Tommy Lee Jones for other Eastwood projects, Clint didn't even blink. "He's a great actor," he'd say flatly, "but we don't speak the same language." Translation? Never again. They've never reunited, never shared a panel, and never even mentioned each other publicly since. In Clint's world, there's only room for one alpha on set, and he's the one calling cut. Number 5. Richard Burton, the drunk who pushed Clint's patience to the edge. Clint Eastwood is known for his calm, controlled presence, but Richard Burton almost broke that legendary patience. It happened in 1968 on the set of Where Eagles Dare, and it had nothing to do with fame or ego. It was about work ethic, and Burton had none of it left. Burton would show up late, slurring his lines, reeking of the night before. Meanwhile, Clint was already on set at dawn, fully dressed and ready to roll. One crew member swore they could see the respect draining from Clint's face like water. Burton's chaotic life with Elizabeth Taylor bled into everything. Every night ended at a bar, and every morning the crew paid the price. Clint didn't yell, he didn't scold, he just waited, cold, silent, and more disgusted with every take. After Burton blew the same line for the 10th time, Clint finally muttered, "I'm getting paid by the picture, not by the hour." The crew laughed nervously, but Burton didn't. The message hit hard. The final straw came when Burton was overheard calling the movie just a paycheck job. To Eastwood, that was a slap in the face. He believed every film deserved full commitment, even an action flick. Years later, when someone brought up Burton's name, Clint didn't sugarcoat a thing. Talented guy, he said. Wasted talent. That was all he needed to say. Where Eagles Dare turned into a box office hit. But their relationship died right there on set. Clint never worked with Burton again, never spoke about him again. For a man who uses silence like a weapon, that was the ultimate punishment. In his book, disrespect isn't something you talk about, it's something you erase. Number 6. Jean Seberg, the woman who tested Clint's patience like no one else. Clint Eastwood never brings up Paint Your Wagon anymore. And if you ever ask why, the answer comes down to one name, Jean Seberg. She wasn't just his co-star in the 1969 musical. She was the reason Clint swore never to mix sympathy with work again. Seberg was fragile, unpredictable, and battling her own demons. She was already under FBI surveillance for her political activism, and that constant pressure followed her right onto the set. Her moods swung wildly. One day she'd light up the crew with that radiant smile. The next, she'd vanish into her trailer for hours, leaving everyone waiting and worried. Clint tried to stay patient, but as the delays piled up, so did his frustration. What started as concern slowly turned into distance. He respected her talent, but couldn't handle the chaos that followed her everywhere. To Clint, filmmaking was about discipline, showing up, giving your best, and leaving the drama at the door. But with Jean, the emotions never stopped spilling over. By the time filming wrapped, Clint had made up his mind. No more blurring lines between empathy and professionalism. He walked away from Paint Your Wagon not just with a film under his belt, but with a vow he'd never break again. Never let feelings interfere with the work. For him, Seberg wasn't just a memory. She was a hard lesson learned the toughest way possible. Clint Eastwood was everything Jean Seberg wasn't. Focused, punctual, and allergic to drama. While she floated through emotions and second-guessed every scene, Clint ran on quiet discipline and precision. By the third week of Paint Your Wagon, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Seberg would stop mid-scene to question her motivation, holding up the entire set. A script supervisor later recalled, Clint would just stare at the floor, waiting for her to finish. You could see him dying inside. That silence wasn't patience anymore. It was quiet frustration boiling beneath the surface. For Clint, time was sacred. Every minute wasted was a sign of disrespect. And by then, he'd had enough. He wasn't a man who shouted or made a scene. He just shut down. That was his way of saying, this isn't working. The real heartbreak didn't come until after filming wrapped. When Paint Your Wagon hit theaters, it flopped hard. Critics panned it, audiences stayed away, and the dream project turned into a public failure. But what really cut Clint deep wasn't the box office. It was what came next. Jean Seberg went to the press and blamed him. She told reporters that Clint's wooden performance dragged the movie down. That hit Clint like a punch to the gut. To him, it was the ultimate betrayal. Not just a co-star turning her back, but a colleague publicly throwing him under the bus after he'd spent months trying to keep the production from falling apart. From that moment on, Seberg was erased from Clint's world. He never mentioned her name again. Not once. If someone dared to bring her up, he'd quietly change the subject, light a cigar, and walk away without another word. That was Eastwood's way. No confrontation, no gossip, just silence sharp enough to cut. Years later, when news broke about Jean Seberg's tragic death in 1979, Clint didn't give interviews or statements. He didn't make a spectacle out of grief. He just stayed silent. But those close to him said his face told a different story. One friend recalled, he looked genuinely sad, like he'd lost something he didn't know how to name. Still, he never softened. There were no kind words, no second chances. At one point, someone asked him privately about Seberg, and Clint said quietly, some people aren't cut out for the work, and I don't need to deal with it twice. That was as close as he ever came to forgiveness, calm, cold, and final. For Clint Eastwood, loyalty and discipline were everything, and once they were broken, there was no going back. He didn't raise his voice, didn't seek revenge, he just closed the book forever. After Paint Your Wagon faded into the shadows of Hollywood history, Clint Eastwood turned the silence into fuel. He buried himself in work, refusing to let one chaotic project or one painful betrayal define him. Every new film became a statement, calm, precise, stripped of drama. He started running his sets like a military operation. No gossip, no hesitation, no wasted words. People who worked with him said you could feel the tension of his control. One crew member once admitted, "When Clint walks on set, everyone straightens up. Nobody wants to be the reason he looks disappointed." It wasn't arrogance, it was protection. Clint had seen what happened when emotions ruled the room. He wasn't about to repeat that chaos again. The Hollywood machine had already tried to test his patience. Stars who over-rehearsed, directors who argued, producers who meddled. But after Jean Seberg, Clint changed the rules. From then on, his way was the only way. 2 takes max, clean sound, pure instinct, then move on. Over time, the industry started whispering about his methods. Some called him cold, others called him a genius, but no one could deny the results. Film after film, he kept proving that silence, control, and confidence could outshine all the noise. While others got caught up in studio politics, Clint was building his empire. Quietly, methodically, and with that same hard stare that made even the boldest actors think twice before challenging him. Still, those who knew him best said there was something haunted in that silence. When the cameras stopped rolling and the lights dimmed, Clint would sometimes sit alone, cigar smoke curling through the dark, staring at nothing in particular. Maybe he was remembering the people who let him down, DiCaprio's relentless takes, Moore's mockery, Streisand's perfectionism, Jones's defiance, Burton's chaos, and Seberg's betrayal. Each name was like a scar, healed on the surface, but still sensitive underneath. Yet instead of bitterness, Clint turned those scars into lessons. Every person who crossed him taught him how to protect what mattered: his time, his work, and his peace. He didn't chase apologies or headlines. He just kept moving, faster and quieter than anyone expected. That's what made him unstoppable. By the time he reached his later years, people stopped testing him altogether. Nobody dared push too far or talk out of turn. They knew Clint didn't need to raise his voice to make a point. His silence did it for him. When someone asked if he ever regretted cutting ties with so many people, Clint just gave a small shrug and said, "Regret's a waste of time." You do your best, and you move on. That's how he lived, disciplined, detached, and fiercely loyal to his own code. To some, it looked cold, but to Clint Eastwood, it was survival, the price of peace in a world built on noise. As the years rolled on, Clint Eastwood became something more than a movie legend. He became a symbol of old-school strength, the last cowboy standing in a world that had forgotten what loyalty meant. At 95, he doesn't chase trends. He doesn't beg for attention. He commands it just by walking into a room. His stare still carries that same quiet fire, the one that says, "Don't waste my time." Every story about him, every feud, every grudge, every silence, shaped the man we see today. Calm on the outside, unbreakable within. People always ask, does Clint forgive? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But one thing's for sure, he never forgets. Every betrayal turned into a brick in his wall of wisdom. Every disappointment taught him how to move smarter, quieter, sharper. That's the secret to his power. He doesn't explode, he endures. While others argue and fade, Clint just keeps creating, directing, and proving that silence can be louder than any scandal. And let's be real, Hollywood has changed. The industry is full of noise now. Public apologies, social media wars, endless drama. But Clint, he stays out of it all. No tweets, no online fights, no statements, just action, work, and results. He's proof that sometimes the best revenge is success, and that you don't need to shout to be heard. Even after all these decades, his presence still commands respect. Younger actors show up early when they're on his set, not because they're scared, but because they know what kind of man they're working with. One who's seen everything, lost nothing, and learned that discipline is the difference between fame and legacy. Clint Eastwood doesn't chase relevance, he is relevance. Behind every stare, there's a story. Behind every silence, there's a message. The 6 names he'll never forget aren't just ghosts of his past. They're reminders of what it costs to stand your ground in an industry built on compromise. He doesn't need to expose anyone or rewrite history. His truth is in the work, in every shot, every line, every piece of film that still makes audiences hold their breath. So maybe Clint's story isn't just about betrayal or grudges. It's about survival, about how one man refused to bend, refused to play the Hollywood game, and still came out on top. Through decades of chaos, he stayed the same. Focused, calm, and unshakable. That's not just a career. That's a legacy carved in stone. If you've made it this far, you already know. Clint Eastwood isn't just a name, he's a statement. So what do you think of his legendary feuds and his ironclad silence? Was he right to cut those people out? Or did Hollywood just never understand him? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you respect Clint's no-nonsense attitude. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.